Yes.
Oh, read that.
So we're still,
They're not really paying attention, so they don't know what you're lacking.
I can tell you the state convention, you wanna go to the state convention? If you're not-
January 10th and 11th, right? In Mitchell? And if they
Yeah,
have
there you go.
that.
You know, I didn't see that one yet, so. You're a step ahead, you bet.
Literally just right. I'll tell you what helped me this year. I can't remember where I was at. In the North Kansas City or they had a 3 or 5 time promotion before. That's what it was like 5 years. So.
Oh, thank you. This inconvenience. So,
Yeah, I've been
I
back.
spent the weekend in Kansas City watching the Vikings get beat by 1 point in the last seconds.
Yeah, those are listed at
I don't think it matters what you how to figure out how to.
I don't know, at that point, it really didn't matter.
I know.
Alright, I think we'll call the meeting to order. 7 o'clock, we'll start with roll call.
Okay, Mayor Manning,
Here.
Brenneman,
Here?
Gill,
Here.
Monahan,
Here.
Glanzer. Here. Nelson,
Here,
and Jones.
Yep.
Alright, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Do we have a motion for the minutes from 10/15/2019?
So moved. Second.
Discussion.
Which meeting minutes was that again, Jeremy? I'm sorry.
It's, the October 15th meeting.
I should have marked me down as abstaining from the last meeting, please. Last meeting I abstained because I wasn't here. Thank you. So moved.
For the rest, all in favor?
Aye.
We have 1 abstain. Alright, and no bills submitted for payment. Alright, we've got a minute for public comment. Any public comment on any non-agenda items tonight? Hearing none. So we'll move to special event application for hometown Christmas. Hello.
Hello. I'm Lisa Houghton with Home Business, and we are here to request our annual event permit for Hometown Christmas 2019. Not much of anything has changed since previous years, so unless you want me to take up time, you can just ask me questions.
Any questions for Lisa?
I'll make a motion to approve the special event application and waive the fee.
Second.
Discussion. All right, we'll vote. Monahan?
Yeah.
Jones?
Yep.
Brenneman?
Yep.
Keel?
Yes.
Glanzer?
Abstain.
And Nelson.
Yes.
That's pretty
All
easy.
right, that looks pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for all your work on that.
You've had a big day, we didn't want to take you. You've
Yeah.
had kind of a big day.
Have a good day.
Yeah, man.
All right, we've got second reading of ordinance 679 for the key lockbox system.
Brian called this afternoon, he couldn't be here, so I'll try to answer any questions you may have, but we haven't changed anything from first reading of this. And this would be, require lockbox on certain, commercial and certain residential structures within the city, as we discussed at our last meeting.
This is only if it's a monitored facility, right? Like fire alarm.
For commercial, industrial, or non-residential structures, so it'd be like schools or whatever, anything that's monitored, with an alarm system or a fire suppression system. And then the only other thing is that it's for, multi-family structures that have like a two-door entry system, it has to have a common corridor. If they have an outside door, a door that goes from the residence directly outside, it's not required, unless they fall under one of those other things, or, but if they have a common corridor where they gotta try to get through two doors, then it's required.
Even if it's not monitored.
Even if it's not monitored, yeah.
And if you're an existing building, you'll have to come up to code, right?
Right, and we give them a year's time to buy a lockbox and to come up to code. Me and Brian talked today, we'd probably, if this passes through, we'd probably get together with him and Paul Clark and kind of discuss how we'll implement this, of course, we'll, if it's a new structure being built at the building permit process time, we'll let them know this requirement, but we'll probably have to send out some kind of letter, we'll have to identify what structures, fall under this and send them out a letter to let them know about the new ordinance and their time frame and what they need to do, so.
And I haven't received any phone calls as City Hall or
I know,
any other council members.
I haven't heard anything about it.
Well, I didn't. Okay, thank you.
I make a motion to approve second reading of ordinance 679.
Second.
Alright, any further discussion? Alright, vote. Keel,
Yes.
Lanzer,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Monahan,
Yeah.
Jones,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Alright, we got resolution 2009-14, transfer of escrow funds from the general fund to the Nicholson Road Fund. Mainly, those escrow funds have been sitting there for a while.
Yeah, so, back when Kelly Point Partners did their development, they escrowed money for the future street improvement, this Mickelson Road that we just did. They escrowed it at $49.50 a foot. It's been put in a separate account with the city, but now that we have completed this project, we need to close that account and transfer that money into the Mickelson Road Fund to basically pay, go towards the bills for the payment of this and close it out. So this will transfer it from our general fund, where this escrow account is in, to the Mickelson Road Fund.
Move to approve resolution 2019-14. Second.
Any discussion? Brenneman,
Yep.
Jones,
Abstain.
Monahan,
Yeah.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanzer,
Yes.
and Keel.
Yes.
Alright, and the next one, if I'm remembering correctly, Teresa, not looking for a motion necessarily, more or less discussion of a draft form of the assessment that came out of our last meeting.
Yeah, so I'm not really looking for any motion on this one, because I want to talk about it first, because we haven't discussed this before, but basically, after our last meeting, you guys wanted me to go ahead and draft a policy per se of when assessments would be due once we do a project, because with our last Mickelson Road with the sidewalks, we decided to give them until the following year, October 1st of the following year in which to pay it. And we probably want to continue that same policy. So when thinking about doing that, I thought, well, let's just make it part of our assessment policy to just add that in there as when this due date is supposed to be. So in this resolution is what, I said, things I've changed are in red, but basically I added section B for assessment dates. And basically this states that, once a project has been completed, the property owner will have until October 1st of the following year in which to make payment for the city. And then if payment hasn't been made in full, that's when we'll do a roll and we'll send it on to the county auditors. So that follows what we just did for the sidewalks on Mickelson Road, and it'll keep it all consistent going forward. So that incorporates that. With that October 1st date, really, the shortest time frame anybody would have for payment would be 10 months, because it'd be, if we completed it in, 10 months. More than likely, most projects are done in the summertime, and we, get them completed later fall or winter, so more than likely, most people would have a year or longer to pay, but the shortest time frame would be the 10 months, so that would set that. With though that, when looking at this resolution, I kind of sat down with Mitch, we both read through it. Our current one is pretty gray, it's pretty unclear of how it, if you read it without the changes in it. It says we have an assessment policy, it says that we could assess for streets and sidewalks and water and sewer, and then it says our assessment would be $100, but it doesn't say is that $100 just for street, is that $100 for the water, I mean, it was kind of unclear. What we've always done is water and sewer have been actual costs, and then the street has been the $100. And we went back, the last time we updated it to this $100 a foot, it used to be $49.50, and then we went to 80, and then last one was this 100. Mitch pulled some exhibits, and we came up with that $100 figure because they were showing what the typical cost would be for not an oversized street like Mickelson, but a typical road plus sidewalks. The cost was a little over $100, so that's where we came up with that $100 figure as far as assessing it, $100 per side. So really that assessment, that $100 is for a street plus the sidewalk. That it should all be one. A street project should be the street and the sidewalk. So we wanted to clarify that, so then section A basically states that that $100 a foot is gonna be for any street project, including the sidewalk. And then I added paragraph B, or the second paragraph under A, to state that any water or sewer project is gonna be actual cost, whether it's linear foot, or sometimes, like with Mickelson Road, we did a per acre basis, so whatever that actual cost may be. And that's, like I said, what we've been doing in the city, but I wanted to clarify it. This $100 a foot, it hasn't really been an issue before because, like I said, our street assessment, like even the last time we did Mickelson, we didn't get over that $100 with the street and the sidewalks together, and like the one we just did, we escrowed the $49.50, plus on the sidewalks were only $22. We didn't get over this $100, but it's gonna get over that in Vandermark. I think you figured it's 80 or 88, I can't remember which
There's
one.
80 for the street and say 25 for the sidewalks, probably.
So that's gonna be the first project that's gonna hit us over that $100, and so, we just wanna make sure we clarify that.
I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. Is there anything here, because the sex already brought this in front of us some time ago, and it affects me, honestly. Existing curb and gutter. Is there any language in there that says existing curb and gutter does not apply? I mean, because that's what we, in essence, what we're talking about there too.
I would say any assessment project you do, you can't assess, or you can only assess what was built, okay? The value was actually built. So this is really a cap. So if the assessment value is less than $100 a foot, you can only assess that value.
Right.
Okay, so if for some reason if we were doing a project and we left all the curb in place, we couldn't really assess that curb against that property because it's.
Oh, remember that when you do Kelly? Wow.
That's if we can say it's a curb.
Because I'm the only one that has curb on there.
That's if we can say it's a curb. But we get in a lot of those types of streets and we change grades.
And I figured that, yeah, we've talked about it before, I know.
Yeah,
But-
because state law, we can't assess more than the actual cost, like I said, and our actual costs haven't gotten over this until now we do Vandermark here.
Okay.
The only question I got with it is,
Yeah.
for sanitary sewer improvements or water main improvements, we've never assessed when we redid any of the projects on this water sewer. If it's existing, we just
Yeah.
replaced it.
We haven't done that very often.
So I wonder if it shouldn't say any new water main or sewer,
Oh.
because in the past, we've always tore all the clay out or transite or cast iron pipe, we just put new in, the city paid for all that, we just assessed on the street
Are you
itself.
talking about replacing existing
Yeah, cause,
utilities?
like on, Elm, for example, when we come through and tear that up, this basically says that we can assess them for the sewer too,
Mhm.
even though we've never done it in the past, so.
I think that still is just council's decision of whether they want to assess or not. You can always decide not to assess, just like we didn't assess for the sewer on Vandermark. I mean, I think that's gonna be up
Okay, I just
to
wanted to
whatever
make sure
city
that-
council you have, is whether we want to do an assessment or not against,
Okay.
and recoup some of those costs, or just pay for it out of city funds, yeah.
I don't mind leaving it up to the council's discretion whether they assess the sewer or not.
Yeah.
My question, when was do you know what year the 100-foot was put in, Teresa?
2017, 'cause that was our last update to this, 2017.
And the $80 a foot,
I think was 15, 2 years before that.
and the 49?
Back in the nineties probably.
Well, in 2006, we first adopted that. I think that was our very first amount, that
2006.
$49.50. So I think that was 2006, and then we stayed with that until
Because
15, then we went to
everything,
80.
because if my recollection, 4th Street was actual cost, 5th Street was the actual cost.
That would have been before 2006, yeah.
It was after that, and then there was the whole sidewalk. Firestorm was right in there,
I know in '03 we were using the 49.50 a foot on.
you know,
No, it's
Second
right,
Street.
well, that could have been.
I think that came in right after 5th Street, I think. Anyway, what I'm getting at is I don't ever remember having a conversation that the cap, the street cost cap, I don't ever remember that covering the sidewalk. I don't ever remember that being part of the discussion.
Yeah,
Because the sidewalk,
I think this,
the sidewalk ordinance came in when for new construction? Cause that
Well,
wasn't.
where it's
even
required, we've had that for quite a few
I
years.
think this is the first project the city's ever done where we put sidewalk in. In the whole past, we've never touched the sidewalks, we just did the streets.
The first one would have been Nicholson going west.
Yeah.
So-
That'd been the only one, but that was about.
I just don't ever recall the sidewalk being part of that number.
never was back then. It wasn't until we went to the $100 a foot, maybe the $80 a foot included it back then. But that was when we decided to start putting sidewalks into that assessment.
But I was here for that, and I don't remember that conversation.
I didn't really either, but Mitch pulled things
Yeah.
but yeah, and showed me where we got the things.
Well, I'm not
Dollar
disputing
yeah.
that that's where Mitch got the number.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is I don't remember having that conversation
Well,
about the sidewalks included in that price, because when we talk about capping a cost, every time that phrase got uttered, it was cap the street cost.
Right.
And we
Yeah,
was
that's
never
right.
cap the street cost and sidewalk cost, it was
yeah,
just cap the street cost. So whether you knew that number
right.
took into account the sidewalk, and everybody else was under the impression that it was just a street.
Right. Well, and that's what kind of came back when we read this resolution before we marked it up here. That wasn't spelled out real well in here, so I can see why anybody that ever read this probably wouldn't have gotten
Yeah.
that out of it, that it did include the sidewalks. That's why you felt it needed a revision to that regard. But
Well, then I think we leave it as just a street assessment, and the city should just pay for the sidewalks. Because everybody gets to use the sidewalk. And I get to maintain it.
Yeah, because none of everybody uses the
We had
street.
a long time to laugh on that. I was just thinking, we just had a small, I mean, there was just, the only thing missing was pitchforks and torches, but if we go back to those, I've already gone back to my neighbors and said, hey, by the way, you're probably gonna see an assessment for a sidewalk. And then I ran away. So, when you go there and you get them to sign the petition to improve their street, and you say it's capped at $100 a foot, everybody at that point made the assumption, it was all inclusive. That's asphalt, that's curb and gutter, that's whatever improvement the city is requiring of you at that time, that's where the $100 came from. So, however you break this out, or wanna analyze it, or dissect it, I'm just telling you, that there's gonna be some folks down here, if this thing goes over $100 a linear foot. It's a very small group, it's not the Nicholson group, but still.
yeah, and I think that's what we're saying with those two tracks is that like Van Noort Avenue, it should include the sidewalks. that $100.
I like the way this is
Yeah.
worded.
And I think that was the intent when it was set at $100. Whether that everybody maybe understood that at the time or not, but that's what the costs did include at that time.
Yeah, and that's why we think this needs clarification, yeah.
And so if we think down the road even a little further, and, what's the warranty on the sidewalk gonna be? 1 year, 2 years?
The contractor has a 1-year warranty on
1-year warranty.
those items.
3 years from now, all of a sudden the city comes around and the sidewalk is lifted. It's my cost to repair that sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you start to add insult to injury, in my opinion.
And that went over $100.
Yeah, so like on Vandermark, we didn't build the sidewalks on the west side, so we can't assess that full $100 a foot, cause we only did probably $80 worth a foot of improvements along there. So those, we have to back that off on those properties. But when you add in that $80, I wanna say the sidewalks are about $25, somewhere around there. We're just over the 100 mark, so that's where that cap would come into play.
And did that bid come in under or on? I mean, is that the number you were looking at when
When we put
I
this.
guess what I'm curious about is the next street project, instead of $105 like North Vandermark is it gonna be capped at $100 and then the next project come in at 150?
I think what we saw on Vandermark were decent prices, I guess, average prices, I'd say. I mean, it's hard to say what we're gonna see next year with all the, and we might talk about that a little bit with 9th Street even, but we have some prices going out this year and into next year.
How does this compare to other communities?
I don't know that many other communities have a general assessment policy like this. I mean, your guys is one of the only ones. I think Lennox has one. I can't remember if Harrisburg has anything like this, but I think, as far as I know, you guys are the only ones that have something like this in place. I think part of the purpose of it is so when you want to do a project, you can approach those people and they know day one what their costs are capped at, and you don't have to wait for a bid or anything like that. And you can always tell them if the bid's coming lower, the assessment's lower than that. So it gives you just a good way to be able to convey that to them early on. That's probably
The reason the 4950 got started was to encourage people to turn in petitions to do their street because it was lower than what the street cost was.
Yeah.
So it was trying to entice people to circulate a petition to pave the street, to get the street paved without really upsetting a bunch of people.
Right.
So, because there was a lot of streets done back then.
The way this ordinance is rewritten, I mean, that's still the spirit of it.
Yeah.
It's less than actual cost.
It's just clear,
And it does.
It spells it out a lot better.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So like in our situation with Kelly Point, this doesn't really take into account that there was escrow money. This is just,
Well, the escrow money was $49.50 for the
Right.
street,
right,
and then the sidewalks were $22.75, so
Right.
we never hit that $100. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And this will serve as, if we have future developments that along the road like that, to escrow at $100 a foot
right,
for their improvements in the future.
right.
Yeah, because that's why we escrowed that $49.50 for Kelly Fund Partners, because it was that at the time.
Right.
And
Too bad interest rates dropped or we would've had her. They're paid.
and then after,
And it took, I mean, we don't run into a ton of projects where it's your undeveloped roads
Right.
that really
Right.
get applies to,
Yeah.
which there's not as many.
Yeah, yeah, and if you do adopt this, then, you should probably have it on not annual, but maybe.
well, that's what I was thinking, maybe is this something we want to review annually or something, maybe we won't change it every year, but if we start seeing prices keep going higher and higher, which ultimately prices always do, we're not gonna 10 years down the road want to be stuck at $100 a foot. We just wanna reevaluate it, are we still comfortable with that, or do we wanna change it, so. Okay.
Are there any changes anybody'd like to see before this comes before for approval? next agenda.
Yeah, but then I'll put it, let you guys think about it a little bit, some more, and mull it over, and then I'll put it on the agenda for next time around, yeah.
Okay.
So,
No, the shallow lot verbiage has changed or any of the.
none of the
Regular
how
lot
we
verbiage has
calculated,
changed.
yeah. None of the verbiage of how we calculate, you know, footage on different size lots, that all stays the same, it's just basically more to clarify what we're charging for the street water and sewer and what's included, you know.
If I read this right, it's if you're on a corner lot, it's 25 foot on a side, right, not 50 foot on your second. That's the way it used to be.
Right, it's 25 per side, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, that was the way it's always been, so none of that's changing.
Alright,
Okay, we'll put it on next agenda.
yeah, thanks for your work on that, Teresa and Mitch. Alright, we'll move to reports. Deputy Ryan, meeting on county sheriff's report.
Hello, I think it was summer when I was here last. Apologize for my absence, but I went to Italy and it was amazing. The one thing that brought me back was the fact that I don't speak Italian. And I like my job, but. So let's go over this real quick. So since the last report, well, in the last 30 days, 94 traffic stops, 39 civil paper services, 13 security checks, 10 warrant services, 2 traffic accidents, 3 disorderly subjects, 3 family disputes, 1 fraud, 4 juvenile delinquencies, 1 larceny, 4 narcotics calls, 2 noise disturbances, 4 reckless drivers, 2 runaways, 2 sex offenses. I only know about 1 of those, the details of that, and that was a parent who called and said that they believe that their daughter was assaulted when she was 3. So probably about 8 years ago. So it's kind of a cold case. 3 vandalisms, 3 medical calls, 12 wireless 911 hangups, and 4 animal problems for a total calls for service of 275 for the month. That's 9.1 per day, basically up 1 from the last time I did the report. So I just want to talk kind of briefly about the perceived school threat that I'm sure you guys have heard about, and it's still being talked about on social media today. The school is kind of taking a little bit of heat for the way some folks believe that they put the message out that there was no threat. They thought that the response from the school wasn't adequate. I'm not going to defend the school, but I will tell you from the sheriff's office perspective that the perceived threat was fully investigated, as it always is. We take any threats to our institution seriously, and it was not substantiated. We train hard, so if we ever do have a real threat, we're going to get a best case scenario, we're going to go in and eliminate that threat. Thankfully, this again was not substantiated. Thank goodness. Any questions for us? Not even one?
Okay, one question, civil paper service, I mean, it's 100% increase.
It's 39 increase. It was actually a typo there, an increase of 16. That was my fault.
Okay.
A lot of people get divorced. No. It was just my math typo.
It's going to accumulate down at the courthouse or something.
Right. Now, as soon as they come in, I bring them out and try and serve them.
That was my only question.
Okay.
How are you finding since we've changed the stop signs and some of the speed limits, how are you finding things around town?
Well, so the 4-way stop right here is having an increase in violations, so I'm addressing that appropriately. I know a couple of the folks that buy the new 4-ways, and they said, well, there's still people doing the Hartford roll through there. They're not really seeing anybody just blowing through it, so I think that's good. Part of it may be the dip right there, which I'm good with,
Right.
because it's a natural slowdown for folks.
Yeah.
But I think it's effective.
Since we took the one out on Fighter, has that caused an increase of speeding on Mickelson, do you think?
The only time I see somebody really going through there, normally it's a contractor who claims they're lost. So we drive faster.
Because they're trying to make up time. Okay,
Time's money.
On the deadline, yeah.
yeah, they're on that.
Contractors are always late.
But I haven't seen anything
Yeah.
really bad. I have had repeated complaints of people speeding on Main, south of South,
Yeah,
but the speeds that they're claiming, I would have trouble doing them in a pursuit vehicle. So, I mean, maybe we could put the, whatever you call those things that measure speed,
Toners,
yeah, those things. And then if we get the complaint again, I can say, look, this is a month or however long we put them up, of them being
We
there.
put the speed trailer out there, because that doesn't register too for
Okay.
traffic.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option, but
That way
I actually
they can
tried
see
to
it.
go through there at the speed that they claimed, and it was, yeah, there's no way people are going that fast, so we had more calls. So,
I've heard that though, that very street, there's a lot of kids on that street, and it's,
There's 35. There is. I live on that. But yeah, it's as soon as they get past that curve, they're just flooring it all the way down to the
North
stop sign.
or south?
They're going south.
Going south.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't even stop at the stop sign in Mickelson.
And another problem that we have there is there's no speed limit sign at the top of Main, so we have to get a speed limit sign there, otherwise I can't enforce it.
And Craig knows.
Okay.
But I'm certainly not ignoring it. As soon as I get the complaint, I'll sit there for a while. There's no real place for me to hide in there and actually run radar, because you have to have it lined up in a particular way, so it's kind of challenging for us to enforce it. But we don't necessarily need to get a radar lock in order to see someone driving recklessly, so we can definitely address it if we see it. I think that, do you guys have a business on Red Lane? I recognize the last name.
It's my husband, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Up
Well,
on, the new development, the industrial.
Road.
yeah,
Road.
because
Rude.
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 No, it's Rod.
No, I think it's rude.
It's rude.
Thank you.
I don't know.
is it rude?
I was like,
Corrected, because I thought it was the
Yeah,
Red also.
yeah.
Is it rude?
Named
Yes.
after the guy
It's
that
rude to say red?
used to mow in the land. Arlie Rude, I think it was, something like that.
Okay.
thank you, Craig.
We also have 2 Kias now.
One's Kaya.
Yeah. Which one's which?
This is Kaya
This is
down
Kaya.
in the downtown area, that's Kia.
There's one up in the,
Yeah, it's
Kia and Kaya.
yeah, it's spelled differently too.
So anyway,
Yeah, it's,
yeah.
we tried to do
Road,
it.
Tomato, tomato.
To answer your
9th Street's
question.
open now.
yes,
The Raceway is open again.
yes. And that's an easy place to mark.
Just saying.
Yeah, Colton Road's the same, I mean, that's always a racetrack. It, always satisfies. I mean, I can sit there with my headlights on, it doesn't really matter. And people say, you guys should put more speed limit signs up there. Why? You're not obeying the ones that are already there, so anyway, getting back, your husband was doing a dyno, and I heard it, I don't know if you guys know what a dyno is, but-
Yeah.
right? And I stopped in the car and I cocked my head to the side like a dog and put the window down. I said, someone's got a dyno in this town. That's how I met him. That's how I met him.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them.
There's two.
There's two.
Cressman has one too.
Oh, that's right, yeah. But I haven't met him yet.
I could hear the one.
He's
on
like,
Cressman.
somebody's coming.
Yeah.
Where's he at?
Yeah, North Vandermark is another opportunity, I would suspect.
Yeah.
And with Vandermark, I would say, it seems very wide, that street is very wide,
Yes.
and 20 seems very slow on that road. As I come down Vandermark, I'm at 20, and then I get on Highway 38, I'm on 35, and then I get on this little narrow road over here with big steep ditches, and I get to go 40, and then I get to go 45, and it seems like, some of that seems a little bit backwards to me.
Well, there's a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit sign coming in from the north. And I don't know if it ever gets
On
down to
Vandermark.
20 on Vandermark.
Yeah,
Well,
it's-
it's 20.
once you get on the gravel there, it's 30. We have,
Now, what's Vandermark gonna be though?
see, there's a little chunk in there that's city limits on one side, and so we put that to 30 through that little stretch of
Right.
gravel.
Yeah,
And once you get past that, then it's 55 on gravels, yeah, so.
right, but, so if it's not posted, it's, well, I think from the south, there's a 20-mile-an-hour sign.
There should be 20.
There's,
There is on the south, there is now.
And so, yeah, when I turn off of Vandemark heading south, I don't think there's a speed limit sign all the way.
there's one that, I think there's one right before, right at the pavement, beginning of the pavement,
Right.
so if you're heading
That's what
south.
the offender said. So what I'm saying is, because it's not posted, I'd do 20 because that's the safe speed limit in Hartford. But it seems awfully slow. So my question is,
Do we need another
betwixt
sign?
the two of you, if it would make sense to make that a 30-mile-an-hour road
From where?
from Vandemark. Or
From
from
38 all the way north.
I think you'll start getting complaints from the neighbors.
You're gonna get them now, because they don't,
Yeah.
they see the 30 about the time they crest the hill,
Mhm.
and then they're punching it. So they're already upsetting those 3 to 4 property owners there.
What are we considering, Vandemark a collector or arterial? Collector stream?
I mean, we've had questions about about Mickelson being 30, if that's too fast, and if you, I'm afraid if you bump it up to 30, you know, like if you start at 9th Street and have a 30 through that area there, once those other houses get built in there, and people are gonna be doing 35,
We don't have driveway.
you know, where do they, at least this way it's, I know they're, like I said, they're doing over 20 through it, it feels like you should be doing over 20 on it when you drive down, I just don't know where do you start switching the speed limits at in some of these roads.
Even if you coast down that hill though, I don't get much over 23, because I've tried it, because I wanted to see if 20 felt odd, because it is a nice piece of pavement. But, yeah, it seems slow, but railroad feels slow at 20 as well, but, it's probably a good idea. So, I don't know, it's probably,
Fair point.
Well,
I would
we
just,
do have-
so then I guess my suggestion is another 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign.
Yeah, we could go with that.
You
I know 20 is slow for a lot of towns on some of the roads that we've got, you know.
Mhm.
Safety.
so you're saying north and or southbound, because I think if you get off, if you turn south off of Part T, there's no speed limits on that.
I think that's where we'd have to put it, is just past Part G, because there is one back further that says 20, it's just that when you come off of Part T, or when you come out of
Yeah.
Knapp's Landing there, you won't have, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, even if you can have another reminder that it's still 20, if you're going northbound even.
Yeah.
Because, again, like I said, when they get to the tee boxes, they're punching it, they're getting out of town.
certainly, I know that it should be a huge issue with the golf course, to put one up in there, and the other lots ain't sold yet, it's easy, it's hard to put signs in people's yards.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, we can certainly look at that.
Thanks, folks.
That should be an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, next we got Chamber and Economic Development Report. Mr. Concord?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A few things to discuss tonight. One thing, I think you have an invitation in front of you for the Regional Economic Development Organization's annual meeting, which is on Thursday, November 7th. That's at, I think, 5:30 p.m. at the Hartford City Center. Hartford is one of the 3 finalists for the inaugural Innovative Community of the Year Award. I'd invite you all to attend on behalf of the city in the case that we are given that award. And I told Nick that if we don't get it, we're out. So that was told to me the other night by a few of the city council, and I just want to pass that along to Nick, so he's aware that we're going to be out if we don't get this award. So, second, the Development Foundation is having its annual meeting on Wednesday, November 13th. It's at 5 p.m. social, 6 p.m. program at Buffalo Ridge Brewing Project. You're all invited to attend. Mr. Mayor will be speaking, and also Superintendent Brad Behrens will also be going over our proposed capital campaign that I'll be talking about here in a few moments. Also, I wanted to give you an update on the dog park. I have an email here from Dina Larson, who's putting together some talking points. They wanted to know whether the city council had any thoughts about them having a booth at Hometown Christmas to take comments from the public regarding the temporary dog park for next year, and then a possible permanent dog park. They wanted your thoughts if we're moving ahead with a vendor booth at Hometown Christmas.
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, if they see it as a viable option, I don't have any opposition to that.
Great. Well, I will pass that along then. Thank you very much. They are excited about this prospect, and they even have talking points prepared for me to go over if I needed them, and a very long email. So I'll spare you the talking points, but they're thorough. You should know that. Last point here to discuss is the HADF is going to be testing a capital campaign here in November. The capital campaign would be our program of work for the next 5 years. It's a 5-year capital campaign, and we're calling it at this point Envision 2024. And as we're hiring a group out of Atlanta called the National Community Development Services (NCDS) to conduct this feasibility study. They might be familiar with their work. They're the ones that have managed Ford Sioux Falls for the last 7 or 8 go-arounds. They've worked in Madison, Mitchell, Yankton, Brookings, Watertown, as well as the GUED and Lake Area Tech. And so they've experience with South Dakota and South Dakota businesses. So we are testing 3 points to focus on. One is planning and developing a business park. Our projected costs are trying to fundraise is $1.4 million. With that, we'd be looking to acquire and secure rights for parcels of land to be used for medium to large projects. We'd be planning on building an infrastructure for phase 1 of a business park by working with local and state partners as well, and with the city of Hartford. And we are looking to increase daytime population and add good paying jobs to the area. Component number 2 is quality of life improvements. We're looking at adding quality of life initiatives to our town, such as additional senior living options, looking into and exploring options for Siouxland libraries to expand. We heard at our last council meeting, I believe, that there's a lot of folks using the library, checking out items. We're also going to assess opportunities for downtown improvements, including public space, community gathering centers, commercial space, and residential development. We also want to look into exploring more recreational additions to the town, including bike trails along Highway 38, and other park improvements that increase the quality of life and the attraction of our community. Our projected partnership costs would be $600,000. Third component of our campaign is attracting businesses and residents. We want to market Hartford to increase population growth. We want to recruit additional businesses, including retail and invest in the Hartford area. We want to focus on industries and attend conferences, trade shows, and conduct business development trips for value-added ag, advanced manufacturing, aquaculture, warehouse and distribution, cybersecurity, and post-secondary ed. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to take this document, it's on your email. Our board approved it at Friday's board meeting on November 1st. We're going to test this to between 40 and 50 different stakeholders in our community to see what their thoughts are on it. We're hoping to achieve the following goals. We want to grow the daytime population of Hartford, or those working in town, by 50%. We want to decrease property taxes by attracting new businesses and construction to share the burden evenly. We want to increase sales tax revenue for the city of Hartford to 25% from 2020 to 2024. We want to add 200 new jobs in the Hartford area. And we're looking to add a significant investment in additional community amenities in downtown and in our different business districts. So how it'll work is that in this process, this feasibility study, this group, along with myself, will be going to our 40 to 50 stakeholders that we've picked out, see what their thoughts are on this plan, and then asking that they would support it. At the end of this process, which will be concluding before Christmas time, we'll have a final report from this organization, NCDS, recommending a go or no-go on a capital campaign. Meaning, is there an appetite from the business community and from different parties in Hartford to move forward with this project, with this 5-year plan of work, or if it's better to go a different direction? So far, we've had 6 businesses that have pledged $10,000 each towards a capital campaign for 2019, and we've collected $60,000 so far of that. $50,000 with one check out of the way. And so our plan is to go over this at our annual meeting next week on Wednesday. Also to announce our initial investors, as we're calling them, into our capital campaign, and take any questions from the public, from those in attendance as well. So Mayor was at our meeting on Friday. If anything you want to add to that kind of summarizes the document that you have in front of you as well.
No, I can say I've been to a couple of your business meetings lately, and it's been a well thought out process and pretty reputable company that you're working with as far as this goes. These are how you get big projects done, is working with an outside firm like this to get it going. And they're gonna be honest with you, if it's not going to work, then you know, hey, you know what, we gotta look at a different route. But, yeah, I'm completely in support of what you got going on there. So, I think one of the letters on there for the stakeholders was just basically showing support from the members of the HADF, public-private piece on there, and I think it makes sense to have support from the city of Hartford on there as well, and show representation of that.
Absolutely. So that being said, what are your thoughts on this? And we'll be talking to you all individually as well. All those interviews are confidential. As a city standpoint, the mission of our organization is to attract new businesses and new residents, in part by improving the quality of life. And we feel that these 3 points help achieve that mission over a 5-year span.
I think it's well thought out. Those points seem a little lofty at times, but it's just a little more aggressive maybe than what we've seen previously. So, plan for the worst and hope for the best. No, I mean, those are very tangible numbers, potentially, you know, so they seem aggressive, but I think if you don't aim that high, you know, you set yourself up maybe for some other problems.
Yeah. And I think these numbers are very conservative from what the cost estimates would be. I think greater than this one will include we'll need public partnership to make these things happen.
Sure.
I also think it, from what I've seen of the GDF over the last couple of months and with this campaign as being part of that, a lot more focused effort and a lot more serious effort on plans moving forward with your recent request for proposals and this piece on it. It seems like there's some tangible meat out there that you guys are really working towards. So kudos to you and that board.
Thank you.
Definitely adds a feather in the cap of the HADF as being proactive versus reactive.
Absolutely.
One question, you guys say projected increase for population growth, like what does that look like?
Well,
Are you thinking
what
like,
component are you looking at?
attract new business and residents? It says market Hartford to increase population growth. Like what is it that you guys are envisioning for that growth? Like how much are you expecting? 5,000 residents, 7,000 when you guys are envisioning this? Do we have room for that many with all these new developments going up?
You know, we don't really have we're not looking for a number to attract. My goal would be to maintain that 3%, but probably closer to 5% population growth, which is, I think, attainable and would be considered moderate to higher as far as our planning goes. Would you agree with that? I think at this point we've missed some of our population growth estimates as far as moderate goes. We're kind of right below moderate population growth according to our estimates. I like to see that be just a little bit higher than that. I think the 3 to 5% mark is a great place to aim for, but anything above 5% becomes a little bit unmanageable. And so part of this then too, and part of my job is talking to landowners to see if and when they're ready to part with the land. And then also talk with developers to see if they're looking for opportunities to develop land for residential needs. I don't think anybody wants to see T or Harrisburg growth, and we don't. We know the effect it has on the school district is extremely detrimental. Let you know what you find out.
Yeah, good work.
Thank you.
Alright, keep moving. Next we have Mitch with
Yep.
engineering work.
Thanks, Mayor. I thought I'd start off quick by congratulating the Trojans on their win over Warriors last week.
Wow.
My,
That hurts, doesn't it?
my
That
quarter
hurts.
pride is still coming back, I guess, but hoping you guys are a little easier on me tonight than you were Ross maybe at the last meeting, so. But,
It's early.
Yeah.
It's out that way, doesn't hurt, and then, the school not shutting the lights on us, off on us was nice too.
yeah. No, I did want to follow up. I know we had some items that we need to follow up on from last meeting, so I can sure help answer questions of those, but I believe there was a request at the last meeting to have punch lists from Mickelson and Vandemark. They are attached to the report. You're able to click on that and pull those up. We've been working with the contractor to get those eliminated as much as we can here. They've been focused on, last week they were focused on getting 9th Street kind of into shape. They had to widen that out. We had a lot of complaints on just the shape of 9th Street west of Vandemark. So they have been working on that, trying to get that into better passable shape. I think they still have a little bit of work there to do, but we're working with Craig too as well to make sure all those things are getting addressed. So I don't know if there's any specific questions you guys have still on those projects, but happy to answer them.
Specifically, I think it's on your punch list, so. Let me just. General item 5, somewhat of a concern. General item 1, there's still barricade laying on the sidewalk at 9th.
Yeah.
2, locate flags, they literally just knocked them down and hydroseeded. So
Okay.
it's like, so, before those end up in someone's, under a snowdrift and someone's snow blower,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're working with them to get them addressed, and they've got the same list, they just gotta get out there and finish them up is what it amounts to. Any other questions? Mark, you look like you got something that you wanna bring up.
I'm just hanging out.
Well, we do have 2 pay apps, for Vandemark Avenue, we have a pay app for Mickelson. We wanna go through those quick.
Let's do that. First one we got is number 6 for $179,923 for Vandemark.
Motion approved.
Big request.
Do a second?
I'll second.
Discussion.
So this is the one we delayed, tabled,
Yes.
which caused some extracurricular conversations.
Yeah, I mean, your contract with the contractor says that once the pay app is presented, that you'll approve and send a check within 10 days. So when we table an item like that, we really put ourselves in a position where we're, breaching that contract, I guess, so. Teresa and I had talked about in future ones, maybe changing it to 21 days or whatever it might be, just to give us that little bit more time there. 10 days is a standard number in most contracts, but we can sure change that on future ones.
But I think part of the reason there was some frustration that there were some things not getting done. Our only recourse with these contractors is, guess what? To not give them their damn money, excuse my language.
Yeah.
So at some point, we have to have some recourse if these guys aren't doing what we're telling them to do.
Yeah.
So
I
I
sure
agree, maybe we're in breach,
Yeah.
but frankly,
I sure understand why you did it. Yeah.
Well, it's the way it works in my world.
Yep.
Hardens, Travis's.
Yeah, if people are unhappy with us, guess what? They don't pay us.
Right. Yeah, and I understand why you did it. I just want you to know that what your contract says with them. And you need to know we are retaining on all the work that they're doing on there too. We retain up to 10% on the contract. We don't pay any
You
items
know,
that
if
are.
I'm waiting on 179,000, Mitch, versus 17,000,
It's a whole different,
my importance on getting a project done right is a whole lot more.
Right.
And
The 10% retainage is built in, I mean,
yeah,
they know that's the
Sure.
game.
Yeah.
but I also, in my experience in working with government on that side of the business, is typically the government entity has the upper hand
Mhm.
on contracts, and in this situation, I don't feel like we have the upper hand, if there is one to be had.
Sure.
I mean, I'm yet to deliver a fire truck, and, me have control of when I get paid. If I'm missing a ladder on a $400,000 truck, I'm missing a $400 item, and they won't pay a $400,000 contract because I'm missing a $400 item, because their contract says everything has to be there in order to get paid.
Sure.
So I think we're a little backwards on some of this, is what's my frustration.
Oh yeah. You know, as far as the contracts that we put together for these projects, they're standard contracts in the industry, I guess. They're boilerplate contracts, if you will, that, you know, a lot of contractors are used to. You know, that's why we use them, because they are familiar with them. But we can sure tailor them to a degree that, you know, there's a need for that.
The contract says final
Is that-
payment upon substantial completion, correct?
Final payment, substantial completion is basically defined as once the site is ready for the intended use, okay? There might still be a few things that aren't done with it that maybe don't have to be done for them to put traffic on it or something like that. Then you make final payment when it's ready, when all the punch list items are done and it's ready for final payment.
But the contract speaks about substantial completion.
Yep.
That's the verbiage. And you make the call on that. Not the council, you do.
Right. Yep.
So if the contract says substantial completion, if you make the call on that, that takes the council out. Really, ultimately.
Right, yes,
right,
yes.
right.
And then final payment is when all the punch list items are done. And that's a minuscule number compared to the substantial completion number.
Right.
Really. Final payment won't be $180,000.
No.
So what's final payment gonna be for the punch list items?
I mean, if it's 10,000, 15,000.
$10,000 in the 10%. So you're looking at $28,000.
Well, they'll get the whole 10% retainage when
Yeah,
everything's.
that final payment.
Right. So maybe our anger's misdirected. You give us the sign-off sheet, Mitch, that they're substantially completed, and honestly, I would say we felt like it wasn't. And that's and we're punishing SoCo kinda, and getting ourselves into a little jam. We should have probably been yelling at you, that's probably why Ross came back and said, man, those guys are mad. Cause we were a little mad.
Yeah.
You would have
no,
been there, you would have got this last.
I came across.
But a lot of work got done that following Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah, never.
Ironic.
Coincidentally.
I mean,
So how-
I don't know. I'm
well,
just
my-
saying, that was my frustration is,
Yeah, I agree.
you know,
Yeah.
things look terrible up there.
Believe
People
me,
complain.
we were just as frustrated. I mean, here we had to try to schedule 2 ribbon cuttings out there, and we couldn't even get that worked out. But
My question is how do you plug the council into that contract and into that decision for quote-unquote substantial completion?
for substantial completion, I mean, it's generally you're not plugged into that part of the contract.
I know, that's what I'm saying, how do we plug into it? I know we're not right now, how do we plug into it?
I'd have to talk to Larry on that, I guess, to help write something like that. I mean, the reason why they typically don't, Mark, is because they know, a lot of these contractors don't wanna get in a position where they know they're working for an owner, a city, obviously. But professionals, our office, and they're used to working with the engineers as far as they know that the engineers are making that final determination of substantial completion and not a governing board. And I think that's important to let that rest with the professionals that do these projects every day. I think that's why they're generally written that way.
I understand it. I understand you have a relationship with SoCup or any other construction company, and you have a relationship with us. But ultimately, you work for us, and any construction company that does business in this town works for us. So why can't it be as simple as you're here every meeting? Why can't it be as simple as saying, I think we're ready for substantial completion, does anybody have any objections?
Sure.
And then Travis would tell you that he's afraid that a 4-year-old's gonna take a header off this sidewalk, cause it's a 6-inch drop. Mark's gonna say there's barricades all over hell and back. Arden's gonna, God only knows.
Whoa, wait.
I don't mean that you mean God only knows.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, can it be that simple?
Yeah, sure.
Because ultimately, when you sign off on it, and this council doesn't feel like it's quote-unquote substantially completed, it's not on SoCup, it's on you.
Right.
So, isn't that an easy way to plug the council in?
Yeah, I think we could sure have that conversation when we feel substantially complete is reached, and we can sure bring that to you guys to weigh in on that. I don't have any problem with that.
And I'm not trying to break your chops, but I mean,
Yeah.
if that were the case, if you knew what the concerns were at this table, you could have told SoCup, I got 4 upset people. I got 2 or 3 people that live up there, and I work for them, and you work for them, and this is what their problem is.
Yeah.
So you get this stuff fixed, so I can sign off on substantial completion and get you paid.
Right.
It would literally be that easy.
Right.
I agree. I think
Yep.
2 weeks prior to him submitting that bill to the council, you kinda know what's coming.
Yeah.
And so you can come to us tonight and say, hey, we're ready to, next council, substantial completion proposal. And then we can say, yeah, everything's good, everything's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, and I said in the last meeting, I'd have no problem saying, you know, cut the check as soon as they fix this, this, and this,
Right.
you know? And so it's essentially the same thing, is giving us an opportunity to give input prior to.
Sure.
And I don't think, I'll probably see this problem again in my tenure here, but other councils might,
Sure.
you know? I don't know the next big road project we're gonna be faced with,
Right.
but
Yeah.
a
No,
sewer plant,
Right.
and we're talking 10 times the money here.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I'm just,
I think you're right. I think that's a good way to approach it. I
yeah.
think that's a good way.
Even if we modify the contract, but it says boilerplate, but if you do extend that from 10 to 21 days, I don't think it's gonna reflect on the city of Hartford negatively to the point where it's gonna skew our bid prices. Now, if we push that out 60 days,
Yeah.
Right.
we'd see some differences. That gives us, we have an opportunity to wrap our head around the pay request and make some comments, and then see if some things get improved on, and then pay the bill, essentially what we've just done.
Yeah.
In my opinion, this works the way I wished it would have worked on that project for several pay requests. Because there were certain things that were gonna get done throughout that entire project that didn't. So,
Yeah, we have it on the table.
So we'll be looking at that, yeah, future contracts and those kind of things too. So, any other discussion? Hear none? Alright, anybody need your motion? Now we'll vote. Keel?
Yes.
Flannery?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Brenneman?
Yeah.
Jones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Alright, we got pay request number 7.
Motion approved, pay request number 7.
Second.
Discussion? Monahan?
Yeah.
Jones?
Yes.
Brenneman?
Yep.
Nelson?
Yes.
Flannery?
Yes.
And Keel.
Yes.
Yeah, pay request number 15, Mickelson.
Hold on a second, Mayor.
Yes.
On the punch list for Mickelson, is there anything that we need to know?
You know, we're following up on that sidewalk out there.
Yeah,
I had the contractor go out there and look at it, and it's very light, but they felt it was, what can happen sometimes is you pour concrete and they spray a cure on top of it, it's a white pigment that goes on top of it, and sometimes they might track on that.
okay.
And it's deeper than that, though. I can tell it went into the surface of it. So I had them go out there and look at it. Right now, they're telling us that, you know, structurally it's fine. They think it'll wear off in time. But Craig and I even went out there and looked, and we just feel we need to have portions of it replaced. So we're gonna be talking to them about that.
With that being said, I mean, we kind of busted Ross's chops about the different finishes of concrete.
Yeah.
And I talked to some concrete folks, and if I can specify a different finish on a sheetrock wall or ceiling, there's certainly gotta be some standard as broom finish or
Yeah.
trowel finish. And Ross, you know, it was a little bit of a deer in the headlights at that point.
Yeah. We usually specify a light blue finish. Yeah.
So there, but that, we had way more discussion about that than
Yeah.
I thought possible at the city council meeting, but.
You know, I would say that the finish it's maybe a little bit more than a light broom when you look at it. But then the tracks in it, the footprints in it kind of just put it over the edge for me, I guess. So, and I think everybody last year thought they would wear off, and they just haven't wore off. So I think what we're gonna be talking to them about is, I don't know that we want them going up there and replacing it now, but maybe next spring. And give it to winter again, see if it changes, but then address the areas that are worse and get them just replaced.
Alright, any other questions or discussion?
So after this payment, how much is left with that one? We must be getting close.
We're getting close on this. I mean, here we're still retaining 5%, so we're retaining $190,000 until all punch list items are done.
Okay. So we're only close, I think.
Alright, no more discussion, we'll vote. Brenneman?
Yeah.
Jones?
Yes,
We
Monahan?
didn't
Hold on, I
we didn't have
didn't
any
say-
motion or
Oh, I'm sorry.
second on this. We started
I make a
discussion.
motion to approve pay request number 15 for,
Thank you.
There was.
Second.
I don't know that there was. I stopped him before he got.
TV later.
Did we make a motion?
No, it wasn't. nothing.
You started. I don't think you got it.
I did the first reading.
Yeah, you did the first term.
Brenneman? Jones?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yeah.
Keel?
Yeah.
Flannery?
Yes.
Yes.
That was it?
I could be wrong.
We'll see. Alright, Craig?
If I'm wrong, bad bird.
I think we have one more item.
Go on.
We need to talk about bid letting on Ninth Street.
Okay, let's do that.
What's tomorrow look?
When is a good time frame for that? I'm thinking,
You know, I mean, we've got right now it's in that change order format, we just need a little bit of time to put it in a bid package format to get that out. We surely wanna be, I'd like to say maybe we could get it out before the first of the year, but surely in January, we won't have a problem meeting that deadline.
Stupid question. Would Sukup do it next year for the same price as what was in the
I
contract?
don't know. They sent us that proposal, for it when it was a change order they were presenting. Whether I assume their bid will be similar to that, what they presented. I'd like to think it might even be lower than what they presented, but I don't know.
Then would they,
I wonder if you legally can, since this one will be completed and done and finalized, and then
it was
there's-
a bid when?
this part wasn't bid as an add-on that they backed out on.
Yeah, is the contract final yet?
It's not.
No,
It will be probably before, unless they would, I don't know, might be a little iffy.
The problem we had with their proposal that they sent us is it exceeds the bid laws. So you can only change order on a public job so much money into a contract.
You don't have to do a change order.
Add-on,
It'd be an add-on. You'd be honoring the same prices that were bid.
To me, that would still be a change order, because it'd be a change order to the contract to bring more work onto the contract.
No, it's no different than the contract for a pay order. The bid price is bid. If we use the same bid prices that they submitted within a year of the bid letting, I would think we could do it.
You're saying because they're not gonna change their
They're going to change, they're just gonna add a new project for the same pricing. Anyway, you wanna rebid it, just saying,
Yeah, I would suggest we rebid it.
yeah, go for it. When do you want to bid it?
That's not gonna
That
cost
was
us very
good.
much, that's just a boilerplate document, right? You can just slide some stuff, band mark out, put some nice stuff in there.
I think I'd wait till after the first year, because that way everybody's got their prices adjusted where they're gonna be, because otherwise contractors going, first year, cement's gonna go up, how much is gonna go up, they're gonna, it might be 5%, it might be 15%, so I'm gonna fudge on the higher number, just to make sure I'm covered for it. So that way that way the contractors have got their numbers.
How about
locked in.
this, we don't go out to bid after it's too late to bid and prices go up, like we've had in the past.
Yeah, we wanted to
Where we
January.
missed the,
I would say
Oh.
we
January.
want to do it right in
We want it in
January,
January.
right away.
there you go. Need a motion?
I think yes, make a motion to take that up for bid in January of 2020.
Make a motion that we go out to bid for Ninth Street project in January. Time to be determined by the council, or by the staff, whatever the date.
This is moving forward with, resolution of necessity.
Yeah, we've done a resolution necessity for 9th Street already. We just want to bid it.
Did you get a second?
No, I didn't hear it. Was it you?
Just Travis did.
Thank you.
Alright, more discussion. Vote. Lanzer,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes,
Keel,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Monahan,
No.
Brenneman.
Yes.
Okay. Alright, any other items? Mitch?
Yeah, I do have a question about the sanitary sewer extension, just when will that be?
We'll be trying, we wanna try to hit that same time frame. That might be, we're still trying to get some easements along there. I've met with, Central States, talking about their easements. I've talked to, Billy Haugen about his easements. His are probably gonna be a little bit more challenging to get. There's some things that we have to kind of work out with him.
So we're on the east side of the ditch?
East side, yeah.
We're gonna be on the west side?
Initially, when we were conceptualizing it, we kind of thought maybe that, but we'd like to stay on the east side if we can.
Okay.
But right now, like I said, I'm working with Billy trying to get some of his easement documents in place.
Township has a meeting tonight where they're gonna approve the easements, so we should have that here shortly.
Gotcha.
I
So
think
we're,
Billy's probably the only one we'll probably be waiting on.
Yeah, I think so.
So this project could be pushed back due to easements.
I'd like to say, I think Billy's ready to sign easements, just a couple of little things we kinda gotta work out with him. I think January, February is what I've been shooting for, I guess, with this one. I think that would be a good time. But yeah, you're right, if we don't, for some reason we get hung up on easements, then that'll become an issue.
What's our backup plan?
Put them on the west side, of this ditch.
That'd be just as hard getting easements or worse.
Yeah, that'd be, winter storms are over.
It'll be harder to get easements on the west side.
Oh, I know where to go, but that's a whole other subject.
Alright, we're gonna keep moving.
Okay.
Anything else for Mitch? Craig?
I don't have anything to add to my report, I'm getting a few things picked off that were on it, batting cages that are down and concrete's up there, Mickelson's all completed, so. Anybody have any questions for me, I guess?
I seen him up there today, or I seen Neil up there cutting, are you gonna try to replace one more chunk?
Nope, what we did the other day is all, I believe all we got left there, all we're doing, 40 feet.
Seen him down on the other side of Crestman's, I thought he was cutting, maybe he wasn't. I thought it was an old
Let's say we're,
Yesterday. Yesterday?
I did another 40 feet.
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's done.
Oh, yeah, okay. Never mind.
Why do you gotta blade 9th Street?
I was kinda waiting for the contractor to get finished up there.
Shouldn't it be prep, I mean, like, you shouldn't have to touch it with a blade, should you, until the spring? Or until the first snowfall?
Yeah, I'd like to get it shaped up a little bit more, but I'm just waiting for that last load of gravel to get put on the west side there, cause it's still thin. And I didn't wanna go in there and disturb anything, cause then they'd probably figure that they're done, so.
That's what I do. Tell me again where in the box we can find those reports on like street sweeping and stuff.
Council information. And I did update that last week for you.
Oh, I don't see that. There it is. Hasn't been updated since 7/1/2019. There. Okay, I'm in there now.
Should have it in through October
Yeah.
now.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
Alright, nothing else, we're gonna move to Karen's report.
I have nothing to add.
We have money?
Questions for me?
Looks good, no, thank you. Okay, and Teresa's report.
Nothing really too much to add, just a couple things. I had a meeting, just to give you kind of heads up, today with, Arlene from ICAP, and ICAP is the one who manages our transit system. ICAP's no longer gonna manage transits at all, but they have a sister company, I should say, it's called Rural Office of Community Services. They're kind of like an ICAP, but they, where ICAP is gonna focus more on housing needs, this, organization is gonna focus more on the transit and like elderly meals and whatnot, so they're kind of, there's actually 4 groups within the state that kind of do these services, these nonprofit services, and they all kind of gonna focus on different areas to kind of pool the resources, I guess, you know, under one location. So basically though, I met with Arlene and the gentleman that's gonna take it over from, and they call it Rocks, but, nothing essentially is going to change. You won't see any outside changes. Still gonna be the Hartford Area Transit. They're still gonna, you know, hire the drivers and themselves. They still take the revenue. They'll still pay the expenses. We just basically still just pay our share, our match of it. But basically, they're actually taking the gentleman who manages it now with ICAP, Scott Fink, and they're gonna move him over to Rocks to continue manage it. So, should be very seamless transition. their year is October to October, so this actually won't even go into effect until October of 2020, but just wanted to give you guys a little heads up that it won't be under ICAP's umbrella now, it'll be under ROC's umbrella, but it should, like I said, be very seamless. They essentially are gonna keep everything the same, hoping maybe they'll be a little more proactive in trying to promote it, so we'll go from there,
When
so.
does our contract end with them?
So it'd be October.
October 2020.
Yep, yep.
Just renewed that, yeah.
Yes, we just renewed that in October, so it's.
How much revenue do we get from those?
So we're under ICAP's umbrella now, we don't get any of the revenue or pay any of the expenses, we just pay a matching share, it's gonna be a guess, 85,000, does that sound something? That's just a guess.
Our matching share is 85,000?
Yeah, it's nothing terrible,
8,500?
yeah, maybe it's, do you have in there? I'm glad
It's
you
not
have.
85,000. Is it really? No. Oh,
I think it's 8,500 or something like that.
Yeah, and that might be per
Yeah.
quarter though, too, or something
much?
like that. I don't have that in front of me, it does.
I got one.
Is this year's budget? Or I mean, next year's budget?
No, this is the sheriff's.
It's changed for next year. I say it's different now for next
I don't
year.
think I have this year's in here, for 2020.
I'd have to look it up for you, see.
Okay.
Unless Karen has
I
this
don't
current
know.
one.
Mhm.
We'll get that to you for next meeting. I'm sorry.
Sounds good, Thank you.
Don't know right now, but, so that change is coming. Craig asked me today, and I'll just let you guys know, the burnt house on Main Street, nothing was happening for a while with it because they were, their insurance company was doing some investigation, and so it had to stay as is, but they have got that all settled now, and we've contacted them, and they said that they will have it demoed within 60 days, and then they plan to rebuild next spring, so just to let you know, it won't stay like that forever through the winter, they do plan to demo it and rebuild in the spring, so that's all settled, so should see something happening with that. And the other thing is I'll be talking with the P&Z board at our next meeting about the joint jurisdiction meeting, and once again, if you guys have any input, or if you had some questions thrown at you that think that we should address, please let me know. And then, like I said, I'll talk with P&Z and see about a meeting date in January, and let you know what they come up with, so. Otherwise, that's all I have to.
Any questions for Teresa? Alright, we'll move to old business. We've got, discuss the park recreation department. This was an item that was from the previous agenda when Nate's hours were running out and what we were gonna do with that director position and some of those things. Since then, had some discussions and kind of just thinking about what might be the best way for us moving forward. Had a suggestion that came forward from Jesse. He had looked into some things in some area towns and seen this and started to vet this a little bit more. And basically the idea is to, before we move forward with a new director position or changing that park and rec director position, is to really be able to set up and clarify what's needed for park and rec in Hartford. Right now, we've been working with a committee, some of those kind of things, all completely volunteer, and it feels like there's sometimes some disconnect between what's recommended and what the council wants to see, and then also, we've got Craig handling parks and not a ton of unified effort toward what's happening with park and rec. Started to look at this from what area towns do, and a lot of what them do is they set up a park and rec board. Something similar to what we have on P&Z, where you get, let's say, 5 people set up on a park and rec board. They make recommendations to the council. They have a vested interest in meeting once a month, twice a month, depending on how their bylaws would be set up, but they'd be appointed by the mayor, approved by the council, hypothetically, if this were how this was set up. And be able to take suggestions from Hartford Area Sports and Rec, be able to give direction to someone who was a park and rec director, and make recommendations to us as a council to say, hey, this is what the community's looking for, this is what we're recommending for parks and recreation for us. As we move forward and quality of life becomes a bigger and bigger issue, I think, I feel like this is a really good plan moving forward, because it helps have kind of a unified group that's really looking at that piece of it and give us recommendations on it, rather than us trying to devote effort to something that we may or may not be able to put enough effort toward to make sure we're making the right recommendations there. So I feel like in a lot of ways it's that missing link we've had over the last few years on what to do with sports complex, what to do with our parks, what to do with certain things. So really, this is on the agenda. Teresa's got a bunch of good information in here about how some of the other cities have broken this out and how they've set it up. Many of them set it up by ordinance. What Teresa found out is when it is set up by ordinance, per state law, the members of that board can't be paid.
Correct.
If it is set up as a committee, basically a city committee, that can be almost structured the same way, then those members can be paid. Really tonight, not necessarily looking for anything more than direction from the council, questions from the council, and would you be interested in looking at a hypothetical, basically a draft of what bylaws would look like for a park and rec board if we were to adopt that.
I think it's a good idea.
I'm in support of that.
I am too. I think that it's a good it's a good step for us.
So what, in the vision of this, what all is, so is this in addition to the sports complex committee? Is this in addition to a park and rec director / assistant? Is this another layer, or will this be absorbing other things?
That's a great question. Yep, so right now there's Hartford Area Sports and Rec, right?
Yep.
And part of what they take on has been sports complex, making maybe some recommendations on what we can do up there. This may have representation from there, depending on our appointees, and they would my vision on it would be that they would probably, that committee, that Hartford Area Sports and Rec, they want to continue to do the things that they're doing as far as planning softball, planning baseball, organizing tournaments, helping with some of those things, and then filtering their recommendations up through the Park and Rec Board. Park and Rec Board would act a little bit more like that group that keeps things moving forward, and they would bring the right recommendations to us. They'd help act as kind of that filter there for
So the way you envision it would be filtered up through Park and Rec.
Correct.
And what about the Park Rec director / assistant, whatever?
Right.
Where does that fit into the scheme?
The way I'd see that fitting into it would be something similar to how Jesse reports to a chamber board, an HEDF board, and Teresa, right? So there may be some general direction from that board, but it would still be a city employee.
So would that board report up to that person?
I don't know that that's been determined. I think it depends on how how large we go with the park and rec director. And if we, the way I would see that is before we even entertain hiring another person, we have this park and rec board, get their arms around things and get a feel for what is needed out there. Whether it's an assistant, full-time director, what they need out there.
And what are the two, there's a board that by state law doesn't get paid?
Well,
Or there's a board and a committee, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, codified
Ordinance or
law lets a city set up a board by ordinance. And it specifically says, and that can be any number you want it to be, you know, any terms you want it to be, appoint them. But it does say in there that they cannot be compensated.
Board
So-
can't.
The board can't, so you can't pay them. Now, Brandon has set theirs up as a committee. It's not in their ordinance, and basically enacted a committee back when, like, probably we did the pool committee or whatnot,
Yeah.
and they paid their board. So,
Do any of these ever have a 501c3? I doubt it, but I
no, I don't believe so. I don't know that, I guess for sure, I'd have to check.
The big committees of the city is how it works.
Right.
There is something specifically in the state law that allows planning and zoning to get paid.
Yes,
And that's just,
yeah, that's a different
it
law,
specifies different types of groups, I believe.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
I could say this, otherwise we appoint all kinds of boards to pay your buddies or whatever.
Right.
right.
This is interesting. A lot. So,
I think it gives,
I'd rather have somebody else debating about board, or, you know, parks and rec and with members, and then let them filter out what they think and bring that to us. And then, you know,
no, I think it works better for both. I think the public gets a lot more input on it. I think they get a lot more direction out of it. And I think for us, it helps keep things moving in the direction that everybody's really looking for.
and it's more formal than just,
Yes.
you know, at one time there was a group that wanted X, and then they wanted Y,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And here the people that want X and Y go to somebody else, and they decide which one is best for the community, pitch it to us, so. I wouldn't mind seeing something like this. Discuss it further, I guess.
I think next steps would be to look at a draft of how to set it up, what bylaws would look like, whether it's a committee or a board. Paid versus unpaid basically is the main differences there.
So, with that being said, what are your thoughts? Are you thinking to pay them or not to pay them?
First thing that came to my mind was, would we have enough bodies to fill the 5 to 9 gaps? I mean, Jeremy, you would appoint them, and we'd approve. It kind of probably gave me a little pause. I mean, I'm sure with the right advocacy, you can get out and get it done, but I can see it being a little thin at times.
If you compensate them, you'll probably get more input
Oh,
from the
heck
whole
yeah.
general public instead of just the one that's got kids in sports.
Yeah.
Because that person, when their kids are done with sports, they're gonna get off the committee. You know, this way you might keep them around and they might actually have more interest and more value to the city.
If they're gonna be paid, they might be a little more vested in
Mhm.
doing their
Yeah.
job, or, putting in the time and effort
Absolutely.
for it.
$40 per meeting.
And I completely agree. I think by paying that group, it formalizes it a little bit more. I feel a little more sense of commitment to that group.
Responsibility.
From that group. And as to your question, Scott, I think these seats will be much easier to fill than P and Z seats because there's a little more emotional connection to something like this going on. I think it opens up a whole different band of citizenry that would be interested in this. as Teresa's, and
The
we'll work.
committee, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Committee is not as formal as an ordinance either.
Right.
So it gives a little bit of flexibility in terms of.
It's easier to
rules,
change,
regulations.
yeah.
So if it is paid, can you have the park and rec on that committee then? Like if you were to still have that director, cause if you do pay, Brandon, it's appoint a city council person is the one that is advisor to the city council. So I didn't know, whereas the other ones, if they're not paid, then they do have a park and rec director.
Well, I think it could go either way.
I don't know, so
Yeah, I think we could.
Like I say, I think
I
that
think
you
you
can set it up how you
draft
want
whatever
it, you know. Who you want that rep to be, you know.
I do think you could do either on it. Yeah, I could do either.
I would hope that it'll clarify our need for a park and rec director. That would be, I think, one of the first
First things to tackle.
that they'd have to really get their hands wrapped around.
So I think we'd be looking for a motion to set direction as to which way to move forward and what kind of draft you'd be interested in seeing. And maybe you wanna see a sample draft of each, based on what we've seen from other cities, they're out there.
I mean, Brandon's the only one that's set up as a committee right now. So I'd be entertaining to see what they do in more detail. And then. Not saying do it that way, but I'd like to read more of what they have to offer personally.
Do we need a motion for her to draft it up both ways?
What do you think, Teresa? A motion
I
or
don't know
don't
if
need
we need a
one?
motion, we'll
Yeah,
just put it on the
stick
next
with one.
agenda and I'll just bring some more information to you guys.
I think that'd be perfect.
Cause we're not really finalizing anything,
Right.
we're just looking at some.
So we could mark up what they had with recommendations and.
Yeah.
Mhm.
See, in Mobridge, they also take care of the cemetery.
Craig, as far as parks and some of this, any input on what this would look like and how that would affect you and your team?
I kinda look at it more as like, where my thoughts are they'd come up with, plans, ideas, work on some of that stuff, and then they'd basically come to you guys and, say, this is what our recommendations are, this is what I'd like to see different, is there any chance of doing this, that, help with some budget number, stuff like that. I don't, the only one that I seen was Mobridge that said that they basically were in charge of the park system, telling the the park employees what to do.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Yeah, and I think that'd just be a conflict in the,
Yeah, I was gonna go, I didn't even read that, but I thought of that is, last thing you want is the chairperson of the
Another
committee
board,
calling you
not
saying.
that that's something bad.
No, but you don't want them saying, hey, the grass is
Yeah,
not
it needs to be covered.
2.5
here,
inches
you know.
versus 2 3/4, and I'm chairman of the committee, and you better mow the grass the way I
That's
tell
what
you.
I'd like to see them
I
more
mean,
come
there
to
needs to
you
be
guys,
some direct,
those issues and stuff
chain of
like that.
command there for sure.
Yeah, they would have to, ideals would be vetted through them, and then the ones worthwhile pursuing, they bring to the council.
Yeah.
You guys either okay or not, and then Public Works Department carries them out.
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna see them, I wanna see them looking at a bigger picture, not a daily thing,
Right, yep, general direction and that.
I get it now.
They can tell Mitch.
Alright, so,
Right, I
what's
think
more
we're gonna start
information?
calling Mitch more often.
Yeah. What is it?
I did point it
I got
He
it,
never calls me.
I got it.
Alright, we're gonna move on, unless you got any other questions, discussion on that. Okay, next you got up, discuss community engagement meeting, dates, time, place, agenda. tell you what, I don't have an agenda to bring for this one at this point, but I did bring some sample dates out there for it. Kind of looking at January. Really was looking at trying to set a date at least for Thursday, January 16th. Looking at Tuesdays and Thursdays, that'd be the Thursday between our council meetings in January. That also, if we decide to set the place as, for instance, kinda wanna keep it as I want the place to be inviting, I want it to be a place where people are interested in going, some of that kind of thing, so leaves open the brewery on that, and we're not special staffing, not saying that's how it's supposed to be, but, at least wanting to kinda nail down a date and a time. I'm suggesting January 16th at 7 p.m. with alternate dates of the 9th or the 23rd.
Yeah, that works for me too.
I think okay for you, Teresa?
See what the school had on, they just got a couple basketball games, nothing district-wide or anything.
I mentioned to Teresa between, go ahead.
So that's a great first place to look, because we tend to set special meetings on nights that there's stuff going on at the school, so thank you for checking that.
Yeah.
You thinking more of a town hall format type thing? What are you thinking here?
Kind of hoping for, a little bit town hall where we've got a chance to have, you know, what we had with joint jurisdiction meeting, where we can do a presentation, show some of the things that are going on, what projects are happening, what our vision is, what does our CIP look like, what was the housing study, little snippets of some of those things that have been going really well, and what our challenges are in the future. But then also, depending on attendance, being able to break it out for a small discussion. In my mind, it was broken out a little bit, like, hey, you know what, we didn't have like a Ward 1, Ward 2, and a Ward 3 table, and, you know, go to your table, ask questions, what's the council doing, ask your council members some questions, have a city staff table, like, hey, this, you know, what's going on with the park, what's going on with this, and be able to just let people take some time to ask questions and come in and not have to ask them in this format, but ask them in a little more community type feel.
I would say, Mayor, the downtown Hartford really ran their deal well when they had their listening session here a couple weeks ago. I went. Each of the 4 groups had their own specific set of questions that they kind of had set up to create discussion. I almost wonder if we could take it to the point where we would have specific, maybe 1 or 2 specific questions that each ward would maybe, on top of their general discussion, maybe talk about. So I thought that was very helpful that night. We didn't have to wonder about what we were gonna talk about, because they really had to, you know, these are the 4 things we wanna talk about at this table. It was really, I thought it was really ran well, Jesse. I don't know if you had anything to do with that, or.
Yeah,
I gotta be careful not to give you a compliment.
I'll pass it along, thank you.
But I really did, I thought they did a really nice job of running it. So.
That's a good format, definitely keeps things from getting kind of sideways.
Right, and that's why, I think that's partially why they did it, because when you switched to the next group, you didn't have to worry about what you were gonna talk about. They had their easel up there and said, these are the things that we wanna discuss. It really was pretty stuff. So, just a suggestion.
That's good. Talked a little bit with Teresa about between now and then, setting up some times, maybe on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, probably not weekly, especially at the beginning, maybe down toward the end, but just every couple of weeks, getting together specifically, at least me, Teresa, just inviting in different city staff, different council members to just knock out some points about this meeting, so that we're kind of ahead of that game, like, okay, first, what's our format gonna look like?
Right.
Second, what items are we gonna touch on? Third, how do we handle da, so that we're not scrambling and putting it all together in the last minute, just kind of piece by piece between now and then.
I've been thinking about the location, Miller Funeral Home, that'd be a opportunity for us to use that.
So it's nice up there.
Yeah, we haven't been out there as a city for a while. I think the last time I was out there for a meeting was the HADF meeting. That might be a pretty neutral, might feel pretty neutral to most folks.
Yeah, acoustics are good in there too, it's just nice and comfortable. So, keep moving forward with that, we looking at January 16th at 7?
Yep.
Okay. Alright, we'll move on. Got an item up for surplus. 1979 boom truck.
Yeah, we haven't used it this year at all, since we changed our ordinance with tree trimming and that, it only went up so high anyway. The only thing we really used it for in the past was just, decorate the Christmas tree. It's 40 years old, it's got a lot of issues, but we've just been kind of keeping it together, and stuck a lot into it, and it's taken up a spot in the shop, so. I guess I'd like to surplus it.
Okay. Motion? Questions?
So what do you need first, just to surplus it, or to give you a motion to go ahead and sell
Can all be one if you want, or you know.
it? I make a motion that we surplus the boom truck and authorize Craig or city staff to dispose of it via auction or other means.
Second.
Discussion? None?
Just a little discussion. Any plans to replace that with anything?
No. Not for years, I can't see it, so. Like I said, we got the basket for the payloader to put decorations up, stuff like that, I just don't see a need enough for it to keep it around, to keep maintenance on it, so.
Right, no, not on that one specifically, but if like in
Oh,
2021.
I don't see for, maybe 5-10 years before the city would probably need one.
Sure, okay.
For the cost of what it, a little bit we'd use it, I mean, when we bought it, we used it a lot for doing a lot of trimming and stuff like
Sure.
that, plus hanging decorations and stuff, and
Yep.
just, I don't
It's not
see a need for a city our size with the way our ordinance are put together now for tree trimming and stuff like that,
Gotcha.
so.
Fair point, okay.
Boom trailer,
Yeah.
they need quite a bit to pay for something probably, yeah.
Yeah, you could run something a long time.
Yeah, Sioux Valley's been good too to help us out doing some stuff, so.
For that, we'll vote. Nelson?
Yes.
Schreiser?
Yes.
Keel? Mormon?
Yeah.
Jones?
Yep.
And Monahan.
Yeah.
Okay, any correspondence to review? I believe so. Not, I think we are looking for a motion to move into executive session for, yeah, personnel.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?